arbitrator. Red flag warning till 6 tonight with the dryness and the high winds. So cut down on any fires. Of course, keep those cigarettes in your vehicle. 60 for the high today. Sunshine. 40 for the low tonight. Getting back into the 70s for Veterans Day. And then low 80s Wednesday and Thursday. 44 Crosby, 48 here at the University of Houston.
Support comes from Blake Hillegeist Real Estate, independent commercial and residential real estate broker with over 30 years experience guiding clients through economic downturns, realty challenges, and everyday life situations. More at BlakeSellsHouston.com.
Crews working an accident over on the East Sam at southbound at the Ship Channel Toll Bridge with an 18-wheeler. They have that block to drag it out of the way. It's KUHF Houston News 88.7. The service of the University of Houston, 9 o'clock.
The Houston Texans pulled off their biggest comeback in 12 seasons on Sunday. They were also not the only Houston team to make a big fourth-quarter splash. I'm Craig Cohen. Today on Houston Matters, the Texans and the Rockets give Houston sports fans reason to smile.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is a production of Houston Public Media with support from Baylor College of Medicine.
Also this hour, the chill in the air will be back with us overnight tonight. Houston Chronicle meteorologist Justin Ballard joins us to discuss our wild swings in temperatures. Also ahead, we'll seek guidance about what, if anything, to do during these yo-yoing temperatures to protect your plants. We'll talk with Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston. She'll field your questions about gardening as well. We'll start with a news update from NPR and News 88.7. Stay with us.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The U.S. Supreme Court has issued an order this morning. It has rejected a call to review its prior decision legalizing same-sex marriage. A county clerk from Kentucky, once jailed for refusing to issue same-sex marriage licenses, had asked the High Court to reconsider its decision. It has refused. President Trump has issued a sweeping pardon of his allies related to the 2020 presidential election and the effort to falsely claim Trump won. The pardon names numerous Trump campaign attorneys and people who met 5 years ago when they tried to create alternate electoral slates. NPR's Miles Parks reports.
The document pardons all those associated with a plot to make false electoral slates that could have potentially interfered with the presidential certification on January 6, 2021. It names Trump campaign attorneys Rudy Giuliani, Kenneth Chesebro, Mark Meadows, and John Eastman, as well as dozens of other people who met often in secret to sign documents claiming they were legitimate electors in states actually won by Joe Biden. The pardons are essentially symbolic, as none of the people pardoned have been charged with federal crimes. Some are charged in their individual states, but the pardon has no impact on those cases. Miles Parks, NPR News, Washington.
An independent senator and a group of Democratic senators broke ranks to vote with Republicans yesterday on spending legislation. This would take steps to reopen the federal government. One Democrat who voted with Republicans is Nevada Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. She says the group got a promise from the Senate Majority Leader in exchange for their support. She says Republicans are supposed to take up the issue of much higher health care premiums Americans will pay for Affordable Care Act policies next year.
We will find out. Part of the agreement that we entered into, and you heard it, was Leader Thune said he would come to the table on a health care once the government was open. And now he's got to follow through. He gave us a December date, and now they've got to follow through. And the American public will see where, at the end of the day, Republicans lie.
She spoke to NPR's Morning Edition. Stocks opened higher this morning on hopes that an end could be in sight for the government shutdown. NPR's Scott Horsley has more.
Markets would welcome a resolution of the shutdown, which has idled hundreds of thousands of federal workers, held up funding for vital safety net programs, and disrupted air travel. The shutdowns also delayed the release of closely watched economic data, including a jobs report that was due last Friday and an inflation update that was supposed to come out this week. Stock in Tyson Foods opened higher after the meatpacking giant issued a bullish sales forecast for the coming year. Tyson's chicken sales were up during the most recent quarter. The company sold fewer pounds of beef, but made up for it with higher prices. And the company behind By Heart Whole Nutrition infant formula is recalling 2 lots after more than a dozen cases of infant botulism. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, funding programs in the U.S. with the goal of ensuring young children and their parents get the education they need to thrive. Learn more at imaginablefutures.com. This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Matt Harrop. One juvenile boy is dead and 4 first responders remain hospitalized after a boating accident in Texas City. Authorities responded to a water rescue call yesterday afternoon about 2 juveniles in the water near the Texas City dike. The rescue boat crashed into rocks because of the high winds, flipping 6 rescue workers into the water. 2 of the first responders were released from the hospital, and the condition of the other juvenile is unknown. Meanwhile, the wind threat is still in play today. A red flag warning is currently in effect throughout the Houston area, meaning fires will spread easier. That's because we haven't had much rain in the region recently, and those wind gusts are expected to reach 20 miles an hour. That warning is in place until 6 p.m. tonight. California Governor Gavin Newsom spent time in Houston over the weekend where he rallied with supporters. He thanked Texans for standing up against a redistricting plan pushed by President Trump.
Thank you for stepping up. Thank you for stepping in. And thank you for inspiring a nation, Texas. Thank you for inspiring the state of California. Thank you for Proposition 50.
The GOP-led redistricting plan faced opposition from Democratic state lawmakers who left the state over the summer to break quorum. They eventually returned, and their plan was eventually passed. The attention it received, though, compelled Newsom to launch a redistricting initiative in California that passed last week. Tomorrow is a federal holiday as the nation takes time for our veterans. Our Rob Salinas attended an event yesterday in Kemah where runners came dressed as Forrest Gump to raise money for vets.
Manuel Gonzalez is an Army vet who came dressed up as Forrest Gump when he first started his run across America wearing a button-up shirt and khaki pants.
What brought you out here today?
Well, I just felt like running.
Yeah, I walked into that one.
The 5K run and Forrest Gump look-alike contest is a first for the Bubba Gump restaurant in Kemah. Jacob Bigger is the general manager for the Kemah Boardwalk.
It's fun to get out here, the nostalgia of Bubba Gump, and then running and fitness and family and fun, and then also philanthropy, and we're able to have those proceeds go to our veterans.
The money raised will go towards the Gary Sinise Foundation. Sinise played Lieutenant Dan in the movie and has actively raised money for vets for more than 20 years. I'm Rob Salinas, News 88.7.
And I'm Matt Harrop, News 88.7.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. Good morning. Coming up this hour, Houston Marine Corps veterans' World War II memories on the 250th anniversary of the founding of the Marine Corps. Also ahead of another chilly night, we welcome your gardening questions from Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston. And the Houston Texans and Rockets each pull off fourth quarter comebacks. We'll discuss with Houston Press writer and Bleav in Astros podcast co-host Jeff Balke. But first, to that chilly and changing weather, Houston Chronicle meteorologist Justin Ballard's here. Good morning, Justin.
Good morning, Craig. I learned last year the hard way. When temperatures fall below 50, those cacti, they need to come inside.
Aha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good tip. It is November, so we probably shouldn't be surprised that temperatures are dropping. But maybe the point is what they dropped from, right?
I mean, we had 15 days in October where temperatures were 90 degrees or more. So that was the second warmest just by looking at that metric compared to the first warmest, which was just last year when we had 18. So it was certainly a very warm October, and we've even had some pretty warm days so far this month.
Upper 80s late last week.
Yep.
I mean, that's, nothing to sneeze at.
It was very close to record tying, and some of us were even looking at going, could we hit 90 for the first time in November? We didn't, but it was certainly something that caught our eye.
And then we dropped into, in some spots in northern western portions of greater Houston, to the upper 30s overnight.
The upper 30s. And we'll likely do it again tonight. In fact, I think there will be a little bit more widespread 30s tonight because the wind will ease. We've had some breezy conditions that certainly kept, wind chills in the 30s early this morning. But that wind also precludes frost from developing. So tonight, I think that wind will ease. We'll see the potential for frost, especially north of Interstate 10, north of Houston.
Okay. What caused the heat for so long and then this dip into chillier weather?
So it all had to do with basically October and early November's version of a heat wave, or heat dome, rather. So, we talk about this a lot during the summer. It brings us the hottest, driest weather of the summer. Typically, 2023 is kind of what I'm thinking about. But this was October's version. So not as hot, certainly, but 90s, upper 80s in October and November. That's warm. That's well above what we should be, for this time of year.
Once we get past this tomorrow, it warms up. Is it warm beyond what's seasonal?
It is warm beyond seasonal by about 10 degrees. So by the time we head into tomorrow, really even tomorrow afternoon, you'll notice the warm up. Today, 60s, upper 50s, low 60s. Soup weather is what I like to call it. Tomorrow, highs get into the low 70s. By Wednesday afternoon, highs get into the low 80s. Now, we'll likely stay in the low 80s. I don't think we'll be getting into the mid 80s, or at least not, frequently over the next couple of days. But you're going to notice that feeling a little bit more muggy outside and certainly feeling warmer during the afternoons. Those lows also come up by Wednesday morning. Temperatures could be warmer than they get this afternoon. So you'll notice the warm up, especially by Wednesday morning.
Of course, the other weather news has been general lack of rain. At the risk of sounding like I'm setting you up for a punchline, how dry is it?
We really have had quite an absence of rain over the last couple of weeks. I believe last I checked last night, actually, we're about 7 inches below average for the season in terms of rainfall. So since September 1st, we're running a pretty decent deficit at Bush Intercontinental. That's the official climate site for Houston. Obviously, other airports across Southeast Texas are running equally below. That means most of us are in at least the first level of drought, moderate drought. But a lot of us, especially east of Houston and west of the Brazos, are dealing with higher levels of drought. So extreme and severe drought are especially present west of the Brazos. So, that could expand over the next couple of weeks if we don't get substantial rain.
Okay. What's in the forecast here, at least in the Houston area?
Warm and dry. So unfortunately, the warm and dry weather, that combo, especially as we go through the fall months, is certainly conducive to drought either developing, which it already has, or worsening. And in this case, a lot of counties are under burn bans, Harris County, unincorporated Harris County included. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Over the next at least 2 weeks or so, it does look overall dry. Now, we do have a small chance for some rain showers, some storms this weekend, 30 to 40% chance. Of course, I'm planning to go to the Renaissance Festival this weekend, so of course it would, have that potential. But
okay, since you're doing that, here's what I'll do.
Go wash your car.
I'm going to wash my car, but I'll wait till Friday.
Right.
Because the combination of you having plans outside and me washing my car should somehow usher in some rain for all of us.
I think between the two of us, we can make it rain.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Technically, there are also 3 weeks left in the Atlantic hurricane season. Right. As you explained in a recent article, the chances of a tropical storm coming here are near zero this time of year. Why is that?
It has to do with, what we're dealing with right now is really a symptom of why hurricanes, tropical storms really, they certainly can make it into the Gulf this time of the year. And they did. Last year, we had Rafael in November, and it got just south of Louisiana, and all of us were like, ooh. Like we were even having, meetings at the Chronicle about, is this going to be a thing that we have to worry about? Thankfully, we didn't. It kind of fell apart in the northern central Gulf of Mexico. But so, this time of year, we typically see those cold fronts move in. They scour out whatever kind of tropical mess may develop in the Gulf. It usually heads towards the east, towards Florida, or the southeastern United States. Obviously, bad news for them, but good news for us in the western Gulf.
You were telling me off air just before we went on air that there are some Houstonians who are pointing out that there are instances, a few of them in recent, well, maybe not recent years, recent decades, we'll say, when we've had a period, a year where there hasn't been a tropical storm. Let me see if I get this right. We did not have one come to the Houston area.
Yep.
And then that following winter, we got snow.
No, where we did have a hurricane landfall.
Oh, where we did
get snow. Yep.
So if we had a hurricane land.
So last year,
right?
We had Beryl.
Right.
We all remember that. And then snow in January.
Right.
There does seem to be a connection. And the reason I wanted you to bring this up is I'm working on, kind of doing some number crunching, working on an article about this, because now we're out of hurricane season locally, not technically, but for us, we're out of hurricane season. And now all of us are looking at, okay, will it snow? Obviously, snow in Houston's a rare thing to begin with, but I did look at, the highest 16 snowfall years, with at least 1/10 of an inch of snow or more. And last year was obviously one of those. We had, I forget what the exact number was, but most of us saw between 1 and 3 inches in January of this year. And there, I'm looking at 2008, 2009. So we had Ike in 2008. We had snow that year. And then Harvey, 2017, we had snow that, I believe it was December. 2020, we had Hannah, which made landfall in South Texas. And we had snow 2020, 2021. We all remember the winter storm, right? And then last year we had Beryl in July, and then in January we had snow.
Right.
So there definitely does seem to be a connection there as far as, but is it cause and effect? That's what I'm still trying to figure out. I think it's a recency bias. Really.
I have a skeptical face on, if you couldn't tell.
Yes.
Correlation does not
equal
causation. Okay.
Yes.
I look forward to reading that article.
Thank you.
Justin Ballard is a meteorologist with the Houston Chronicle. Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
We will discuss the chilly weather a bit more later in the hour when we field your gardening questions for Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston. Up next, the U.S. Marine Corps is officially 250 years old today. We revisit a conversation with a Marine and Houstonian who was at the Battle of Iwo Jima during World War II. Stay with us as Houston Matters continues.
Hi, I'm Lenny Ambrose from St. Arnold Brewing Company, proud supporters of Houston Public Media. Right now, with your $60 donation, you can choose tickets to News and Brews. This member-exclusive event takes place February 17th. Enjoy a pint, connect with fellow NPR fans, and meet the Houston Public Media Newsroom in person. Select News and Brews tickets when you donate at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Rain. Now on view, tickets at mfah.org.
Support comes from the law firm McFarland PLLC, eminent domain attorneys focused exclusively on representing landowners against the government's taking of private property for public use across the state of Texas. More at McFarlandPLLC.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from introducing Metro Downtown Direct, helping riders get home for the holidays with service between downtown and Bush Intercontinental Airport. Details at ridemetro.org/500.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. 250 years ago today, the U.S. Marine Corps was formed. Celebrations are taking place nationwide today. Here in Houston, the city had initially planned to hold its first ever Fleet Week in conjunction with the anniversary, but due to the federal government shutdown, postponed Fleet Week until next year. Nevertheless, between the anniversary and Veterans Day Tuesday, Marine Corps veterans will be on Houstonians' minds. Veterans like late Houstonian Aubrey Farb. He served during World War II. In 1943, he joined the 3rd Marine Division as a Japanese language officer. He was just 21 years old at the time. After spending time at the U.S. base in Guam the following year, he joined the forces that would eventually take the island of Iwo Jima, about 750 miles south of Tokyo. It's one of the most famous battles in the Pacific Theater. In 2019, less than a year before his death, Farb spoke with Houston Matters producer Joshua Zinn about his experiences with the Marines before, during, and immediately after that battle.
When I meet with Lieutenant Aubrey Farb at his apartment, he has 2 big maps ready and waiting to show me. One was of the entire Pacific Theater during World War II, and the other was of the island of Iwo Jima, showcasing the different routes the various Marine divisions took and the Japanese defensive lines they had to break through. In June of 1944, Lieutenant Farb was shipped off from San Francisco all the way to Guam, a little island in the Pacific Ocean about halfway between Papua New Guinea and Japan. Japan had occupied Guam for several years, and now the Allied forces were trying to take it back. Farb remembers when he arrived.
It was raining. I was assigned a platoon because the ship I was on was a troop ship with Marine enlisted men. So I was assigned a platoon. I had a sergeant and a corporal to assist me. And we were taken out to the woods, and we had to make a bivouac. And we did that. The guys chopped down trees and brush and put up their pup tents. But I only had a half of a tent, a shelter half. So my corporal and sergeant and I had one shelter half, one blanket, and one poncho to put up minimum cover for the rain. And the next morning we finished off. And during the day, my corporal and sergeant built me a hut out of trees and so forth that they cut down. And I had a nice dry place to spend the next night.
As a Japanese language officer, his job was to act as translator for any prisoners of war. Unfortunately, those were far and few between at the time.
There wasn't a lot of work for the language officers to do then. We didn't have many prisoners from Guam. One of the things that I was asked to do was to write a surrender leaflet in Japanese characters to drop from a small airplane over the coast of Guam. The Japanese were jumping off the cliff and committing suicide, and what we tried to do was to induce them to surrender. It was difficult to get Japanese to surrender because they had been taught that if you surrendered, it was the same as you had died. You were considered to be a nobody. That meant that prisoners had never been taught what to say when they were interrogated, and they were a source of good information.
The final stages of the Pacific War began in late 1944, and Iwo Jima was a major strategic location. The Japanese military had built airfields there that would be useful to the Allies for their planned attacks on Japan itself. Thus, the U.S. forces set out to gain control of the island in early 1945.
On February the 19th, 1945, the 3rd Marine Regiment and the 9th Regiment landed at Iwo. The Japanese language officers at headquarters remained aboard ship. The 21st Regiment never landed at Iwo. In fact, there was a great deal of dissatisfaction between our General Graves Erskine and the head of SINCPAC. Erskine wanted to put the 21st Regiment on shore, but the Admiral refused. When I got on shore, which was on the 3rd day after the original invasion, we came on shore with no opposition, and division headquarters was here just north of the airfield. There was a cliff. The rest of the island was above the airfield, and so division headquarters was against the cliff. And the reason they chose that was that the Japanese could lob shells over, but they couldn't drop them on us. The shells went over into the airfield. A few days later, the Navy construction group, the Seabees, arrived, and they went to work rebuilding the airfield. They had lights up, and they worked night and day to rebuild the airfield. We moved up towards the front a few hundred yards and set up headquarters again. I had a foxhole overlooking the airfield. In addition to my duties as a language officer, I also had duties as any other officer to inspect the guard, and I would climb up through the rocks and yell out the password. One day I came back and everybody laughed at me, and I said, what are you laughing at? My carbine had no ammunition, so apparently I had dislodged the magazine climbing through the rocks, so I had a weapon that couldn't have been fired.
With his linguistic expertise, Farb brought a pretty valuable skill to the table, particularly when they discovered papers on Japanese soldiers that actually contained some vital strategic information.
So, some people came back and said there was a Japanese graveyard up there, and I went up to look at it. It wasn't much, but the interesting thing is that I found a paper where the Japanese had written their strategy for protecting Okinawa. They realized that the next place that we would go would be Okinawa, and that said that they weren't going to contest our landing but that it would starve us out by kamikazes. This was the first we had heard of kamikazes. There had been no kamikazes at Iwo. Kamikazes were Japanese aviators who would fly a fighter plane and crash it into ships, hoping to sink the ship. And they did sink a few ships. My brother was on a destroyer escort, and his ship got hit, but it was damaged and did not sink.
Closer to the end of the war, Lieutenant Farb was put in charge of the headquarters for his Marine Division, specifically to man communications and protect them from enemy incursions on the island.
After a while, I began to get telephone calls that there were snipers, and an ambulance called and said he had been hit by snipers. My orders were that you were not to fire your weapon unless you saw a Japanese and you could hit somebody. Then I got a call from the Army anti-aircraft gunner who wanted permission to use his anti-aircraft gun as field artillery because he said he was getting sniper hits, and I refused that. But it turned out he was right. He was getting fire, and his guard dog was killed that night by the enemy fire. Where was this fire coming from? It was coming from the 5th Division Tank Battalion. It had lost its bearings and was firing into our lines, but fortunately nobody in the 3rd Division was hit. After I had a number of people call in about snipers, I called the colonel in charge, and he came out and talked to me, and he said, "Lieutenant, there's a full moon tonight, and the sky is clear. We'll go up the top of that hill, and if there's anybody out there, we'll be silhouetted and we'll draw fire." I never was good at track, and he beat me to the top of the hill. We drew no fire. That's the closest that I came to combat.
The Battle of Iwo Jima lasted 5 weeks, and as Farb explains, was quite costly.
Finally, about the 28th of March, the campaign was over. It was fierce. The Japanese had dug tunnels and underground facilities all through the island, and we had to go in and clean those out. It was a fierce battle. The Japanese lost about 20,000 men, but we had 20,000 casualties, and over 6,000 were killed. When I went over with the American troops, there were 32 second lieutenants in that group, and half of them did not make it through Iwo. They were either killed or wounded. After all, in the Marine way, the officer in charge of a platoon or company was out in front, and he went first. So it wasn't a very safe way to operate. About the 1st of April, we went on another troop ship, which was basically empty. We all had a hard time not getting seasick, and we went back to Guam. It was like going home. Guam was a nice island, and the 3rd Marine Division headquarters was in a beautiful coconut grove. And that's where we stayed, and we began to prepare for the invasion of Japan.
Much to the relief of Lieutenant Farb and the other members of his division, they would not, after all, have to fight in Japan.
In August, I think it was August the 14th, I was in my tent, and I was listening to my shortwave radio, and I heard a broadcast in Japanese, which I thought said that the Japanese had surrendered. I then found the broadcast in English, and so I went down to the officers' club. I stopped the music and made the announcement that the war was over. Nobody would believe me. In fact, one ex-football player came up and threatened me. He grabbed me by the throat and said, "Lieutenant, if this is your idea of a joke, there'll be a delegation from JASCO down to see you tomorrow. About 15 minutes later, the sergeant from operations came out and found his commanding officer, who made the announcement that I had truthfully said that the war was over, and there was pandemonium within the club. It's hard to imagine our feeling, because we knew we would never have to go to Japan. In the meantime, Truman had had the atomic bomb dropped on Nagasaki, and that was to be our next objective. After the war, we found out that the beaches at Nagasaki had been fortified with underwater concrete and steel barriers, which would have been horrible for our landing craft. Fortunately, we didn't have to go there.
Lieutenant Farb did end up in Japan, but with the war officially over, it was just an occupational position. And somewhat fortunately, it was a brief stay.
After a couple of months, I was sent to Japan. I was assigned to a Japanese naval base on the island of Kyushu, which is the most southern Japanese main island. On the way up, I flew into Tokyo, where I found my brother on his ship at Yokosuka. That's where the war was officially terminated. In Yokosuka, I had a small Japanese house, and it had no heat, so the nights were cold. So I took a Navy blanket to a Japanese tailor and got him to make me a bathrobe, and I used that to keep warm at night. After 2 bouts of bronchitis, my colonel called me in, and he opened his desk drawer and took up a folder and opened it and handed me some papers. He said, "Lieutenant, here are your orders. You can go home. I'm tired of you being sick all the time." So I went home on a merchant ship that took about 2 weeks to go, and I landed in San Diego on Christmas Day, 1945. I took my discharge from the Marine Corps at the Brooklyn Naval Base in February 1946.
After the war, Farb worked in New York City as a CPA for a while, but eventually found his way to Houston, where he has lived ever since. For Houston Matters, I'm Joshua Zinn.
That report and conversation with Houstonian and Marine Corps veteran Aubrey Farb was recorded in 2019. Farb died in 2020. Today is the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Marine Corps. Just ahead, how to keep your garden healthy amid this yo-yoing weather, and your other questions for the Garden Club of Houston's Meg Tapp at talk@houstonmatters.org or 713-440-8870 as Houston Matters continues.
You count on Houston Public Media. That's why you're here right now. Take the next step and become a new member today. Every gift makes a difference. And with a gift of $5 a month or more, you'll receive PBS Passport, a member benefit that lets you stream more of the shows you love anytime. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. Join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Focused policyholder plans and annual programs. More at texasmutual.com/TXM Advantage.
Support comes from Children's Museum of Houston, presenting Faithful Friends, an exhibit fostering connection, curiosity, understanding, and friendship. Families explore other cultures through the eyes of Houston kids. More at cmhouston.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Drexel University, whose cooperative education program positions students to explore future careers and discover their passions before graduation. More about experiential education at drexel.edu.
This is Houston Matters. I'm Craig Cohen. On the second Monday of every month, we set aside time on this program to field your questions about whatever is or is not growing in your yard. For Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston, you can call or text now to 713-440-8870. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org or post your question in the chat on our video stream on Houston Public Media's YouTube channel. Meg Tapp, good morning.
Good morning to you. I got both names. I must be in trouble.
Oh.
Meg Tapp.
Meg Tapp, you sit down right now and talk to us about gardening. As we await those calls and texts and emails and some such stuff, temperatures, as we were talking about earlier, took that nosedive overnight. We will drop into the 40s in some spots, the upper 30s overnight again tonight. Before we warm back up again. And, of course, over the course of the day, it warms up, cools down, warms up, cools down. You know, that's how weather works.
Fascinating. It actually is fascinating.
What do we do with the plants in our garden when we go through these stretches where there are these big temperature swings?
So in real life, 40 degrees is not that big of a deal. It's, down into the 30s. Obviously, everyone knows when it's freezing, that's a big deal. But 40, 42, something like that, your plants can handle it. Unless it's something like an orchid or something super, super tropical. But really, our plants are used to this because they've been around for a while. But when it gets cold, or when it starts to get cold, or even if it gets cold for just a minute and then warms up again, that signals the plant to start its next phase. So that will set it off going, oh, okay, winter's coming. So it will start doing what it needs to do, just that one little bit. Like if it...
Our plants are like the Starks in Game of Thrones.
Do not know what that is.
Winter is coming.
Okay.
With people who watch Game of Thrones, or read it.
I mean, I know I've heard it. Right. I don't know how to read. But anyway, just kidding. But so that will spark. Plants are actually interesting. When you have a seed or an acorn, there's acorns everywhere, and even pecans everywhere, all over the ground. In order for it to know to grow into its next thing, it has to have a signal of some sort. So with a seed, it's actually water. If you took you could have an acorn or a seed. That's why seeds can live in their seed packet without ever doing anything, because they're not exposed to water. Because once they're exposed to water, that tells the seed, oh, I got to get going. I'm ready to start my journey into turning into being all that I can be. So it's kind of interesting, but this cold snap will do that for your plants. And it also will help a little bit with the weeds, because weeds have been around very, very long time. And there's warm season weeds and cold season weeds. So we're in the messy middle. Still got our warm season weeds going. And then the cold snap will let the cold season weeds start their process. They will have their signal that it's time for them to go. So it does help for it to get cold, because it does tamp down the warm season weeds. But you can always help everybody out in your garden by going and weeding. So there's weeds that are kind of surface weeds, and you can just pull them up. But then there's those tap roots weeds that are really far down in the soil, and those you actually have to dig out, or else you will be punished the next season, because basically it's almost like you've hurt it, like you've taken the top off, but you left all its roots. And so I think, honestly, they start those weeds with the big taproot. Think, I did not appreciate that at all. So I'm going to come back worse and meaner the next go round.
Good idea to do that before there's a hard freeze?
Anytime, because they have their whole cycle going, and their cycle is to spread seeds so they can reseed themselves the next spring if it's a warm season. So anytime you can get a weed out, it's the right time.
I would think also it'd just be easier to pull the weeds up.
It's hard right now because we haven't had any rain. So it's much easier when the ground is a little like the soil is more malleable. But that said, also be careful with watering your lawns, because we don't really need to do that. You could go the whole winter without watering your lawn from now on, even though it's dry, because it's this season is starting where it knows to calm down and just be. So it's not trying to actively grow or actively do anything.
Would you recommend watering the soil in your garden before weeding to make it easier to pull the weeds up, or is that something that would promote more weeds to grow?
Yes to both.
Okay.
But it's honestly, anytime getting out there to weed would trump anything else. So if that's what it takes to get you to go get your weeds out of there, do it. And also, like the summer things that you've planted, they're actually getting their seeds ready to start spreading them out and reseeding themselves. So some of it is great. Like if you want to fill in a bed, that's how it does it. It's also a time, if you felt like it, if you got the time and it would be interesting to you, you can start saving your own seeds. And that's actually, it's kind of fun. It's a good activity to, like, kind of a family activity. But you know those little kind of organza bags that are party favors, or sometimes little jewelry things come in it. It's like a little silk bag with a little drawstring. You can actually just put that over a flower and put the drawstring, close the drawstring, and then when the seeds are ready, instead of dispersing themselves, they'll disperse into that bag. And now you have just collected your seeds, and you can decide for yourself where you're going to put them.
Why don't we dive into some questions? We have Alon on the line from Northern Acres Homes. Alon, what's your question for Meg Tapp?
Yes, you hear me okay?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I'm happy. My 4 Mutual papaya plants, 2 years old, went through a lot of trouble to protect them from freezing last winter, but they're bearing fruit now, so I'm enjoying that. I collect bags of leaves that my neighbors put out to be hauled away and save the city some money, because I use the bags of leaves as insulation against hard freeze. I just pile them up over the plants and bushes as insulation. My question, though, is if there's a light freeze coming, depending on the humidity, if it's dry or humid, is going out at night and spraying the plants and yard with water help insulate it, because water tends to keep temperatures the same, but evaporation is a question. Does it harm or help to spray down with water if your predicted temperature is like, 29, 30 degrees Fahrenheit?
All right. I appreciate the call and the question, Meg.
Yeah, if you're going to get really cold like that, so this amount of cold that we're going to have right now, don't water anything. It's fine. So basically, when you water a plant, it uses it to drink, and that creates its own heat. So the reason why you water something before, when it's going to be a really big freeze, is you water it and then you cover it. Like you said, you can save the bags of leaves. That's great. You can, use old T-shirts, sheets, whatever. And you really want to protect the part of the plant that goes into the ground. That's more important. If you only have one thing that you can save, you want to save where the part of the plant, the trunk, touches the dirt, because you need to keep the roots alive more so than the foliage. If you could wrap the foliage too, that would be great. But sometimes people do that thing, it's called a lollipop, when you put you cover it like a little tree or a bush. You cover just the top, and then you've left the trunk exposed, and that's actually backward of importance. So, yes, you would water if it's going to get really, really cold, but you don't need to water now. It'd be worse to water now because, like I said, you're going to teach the winter weeds to come and be stronger, and it's not the right time. It's not hot enough to water.
Thanks again for that call. A viewer on our YouTube channel asks, why are my blood orange leaves now turning yellow?
I don't know. I have the worst I have the worst luck with citrus. There is a chart, and I don't have it with me, of course. There is a chart that tells you what's wrong with your plants by the color of the leaves, and it's called macronutrient deficiency chart. If you'll just Google that, it'll come up, and it's actually helpful for anybody. It'll help you with any kind of house plant or anything. It'll say, like, if the veins are showing up yellow, then it's this. If it's brown around the edges, it's this. And I do not have it with me, so I do not know.
Could it be a number of things? I mean, it seems like the kind of thing that it could be everything from too much water to you're not getting some nutrients in there, or some pest has come along, or who knows what.
Exactly. So if you do that macro or maybe it's micro. I can't even remember which one. I think it's micro deficiencies. But anyway, just Google that and that will come up. It's actually a handy chart to have. And then the other thing you can do is Southwest Fertilizer lets you send them, you can email them a picture of it or take it in a baggie and take it to their store, and they will tell you exactly what it is and also sell you what you need to fix it.
All right. Vanetta writes, we have boxwood bushes around our house in northwest Houston. They're probably 40 years old. Every now and then a branch will bleach and turn white. This area seems to spread, and I've cut the branch out. Do you know what causes this?
It's a boxwood blight, and it took a long time to get here, so that's why your 40-year-old ones make sense. It happened, I want to say, like 8 years ago. I remember hearing about it up in Tennessee, but it's down here by now. So unfortunately, those are not natives. Those are imported plants, and they cannot survive boxwood blight. So eventually, you'll have to take them all out and start all over, because once it's in there, it's in there. It's in the soil, and it won't transfer to something else if you planted something else. But people, in general, are swapping those out for YEW plants. If you drive around, you'll kind of just see that there's a transition happening. So it's you can either bite the bullet and do it all at once and pull them out, or just it's as they start to have that problem, then pull them out. But then you're going to look. Usually people who have boxwood, it's kind of a formal garden looking. So it's kind of weird if you start taking one out and then putting a U, and then it'd be like U, boxwood, 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 U, so. But another thing that looks pretty good is a plumbago. It's not a native, but it's kind of like a native, but it fills in really, really well. It won't have that formal hedge looking, but it almost has like an English garden look. So if you just want to not even have that border of the boxwood, you could just put something that's a big space filler like a plumbago, and it comes in white and blue.
I had a plumbago once, and it really hurt my lower back. Terrible joke, isn't it? It's just a terrible, terrible joke. Let's see. If we didn't get to your question, or you think of one later today or in the coming days and weeks, you can, as always, email it to us at talk@houstonmatters.org. You can text us anytime at 713-440-8870, and we'll try to address it next time with Meg Tapp from the Garden Club of Houston. Meg, as always, thank you very much.
Thank you kindly.
And still to come, Sunday was comeback day in Houston sports. We discuss the Texans and Rockets' fourth quarter exploits. Stick around as Houston Matters continues.
Inch by inch, row by row.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Media comes from Collaborative for Children, advancing early education across Greater Houston by working with caregivers and communities so every child enters school ready to succeed. More at collabforchildren.org.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and the 45th Annual Houston Ballet Nutcracker Market, coming this Thursday to NRG Center. Early bird and general admission tickets available at Ticketmaster and select HEB business centers.
Houston Matters with Craig Cohen is made possible in part by Ellen Benninghoven and Dr. Michael Schaefer, and with gifts from listeners like you.
The Houston Texans overcame a 19-point fourth quarter deficit, scoring 26 unanswered points in those final 15 minutes to defeat the Jacksonville Jaguars 36-29 Sunday. It was the Texans' biggest come-from-behind win since 2013. Let's talk about it. Jeff Balke is here from the Houston Press and the Bleav in Astros podcast. Do you believe in these Texans?
No. But I did.
I set you up to say, yes, I believe, and then you just don't.
Listen. It was a tremendous win yesterday. It was an absolute must-win. They lose that game, they have zero chance of making the postseason. As it stands, it's still going to be a tough road to hoe for them. But it was a really encouraging win where they dug themselves a hole based on some just poor play and turnovers. But, they dug themselves out. And from that, it was impressive. I thought from middle of the second quarter on, really particularly third and fourth quarter, it was just a well coached game, well thought out. They had been 0-10 inside the 3-yard line this year. I mean, that's remarkable to actually have that happen. And they were very good in those situations. Davis Mills was excellent down the stretch. They got the running game going a little bit. And then, of course, their defense is just spectacular and has been all season long. It was a very, very encouraging win. Now they're going to get C.J. Stroud back. They're going to get some of their offensive linemen back, which should help. So hopefully they can go from there. These types of wins can propel teams on to more wins.
Let me underscore how big of a hole they dug themselves on Sunday. As you said, Davis Mills started in place of Stroud. He threw an interception on the opening drive. Then, after a Jags field goal on the ensuing kickoff, Tremon Smith fumbled and lost possession. Mm-hmm. After a Jaguars touchdown, the Texans gave up a 72-yard punt return. Just like that, it was 17-0.
Yep, and by the way, the field goal was actually closer because they committed a personal foul penalty on the original field goal. So, yeah, it was the whole beginning of this game was a total disaster. I mean, it looked like one of those. A friend of mine texted me and said this game is going to be very painful, and I was like, and I had not even started watching it yet. I was catching up. So yeah, it was a remarkable comeback in that regard, and this is the kind of thing that can make teams better.
I also wonder if there was some underlying, like if you look at the statistics over the course of the game, sometimes what you miss is that what's on the scoreboard doesn't necessarily reflect who's controlling the ball, who's actually gaining yardage. Like as the game went on, it became more and more lopsided that the Texans were really in control of this game. They were just failing to execute in horrible ways left and right early on, and then again in the third quarter, they just weren't getting anywhere.
And that's been their MO this year, is they are a team that makes too many mistakes, particularly penalties, things like that. They're also a team that doesn't score enough. They don't put the ball in the end zone nearly enough. And so they turned that around in the second half, flipped the script on what has been their MO for the entire season, and it resulted in a win over a Jacksonville team that's not bad. Now they're going to have to go out and prove it and continue to do it going forward. The biggest problem for them is their offensive line. I mean, I'm not sure what the coaches were thinking starting a guy that came right off the practice squad instead of one of their veterans, even with guys that are injured. But they did fix that mistake as they went on through the game, and that did get better. Give it up to Davis Mills for coming in and really playing a very solid game.
Yeah, I think also a lot of us got so used to seeing him as the starting quarterback during a rebuild with a lot of one-and-done players on the team, and just the fact that they couldn't move the football when he was under center for so long, that the thought of, he's going to start, all right, well, this game is a waste. It's not fair.
No.
And suddenly you come to the realization that, he is a professional quarterback and a perfectly capable backup, and demonstrated that he can start and lead a team to a win.
No doubt. And look, the Texans defense is a beast. I mean, that Derek Stingley one-handed interception, 4 sacks from Danielle Hunter, the strip sack for the touchdown at the end of the game.
Time expiring, yeah.
Just really an unbelievable defensive juggernaut. That's what makes needing the offense to be good so important, because this is going to be one of the top 2 or 3 defensive teams in all of football, and it would be a shame to waste that if your offense can't put the ball in the end zone.
The Texans are now 4-5, which isn't a record that inspires a lot of confidence, but they only trail the teams in the battle for the final AFC wildcard spot by 1 game.
Right.
That includes the Jags.
Right.
So in theory, maybe they end up tying and maybe they win the tiebreaker. Who knows? As you look at the schedule in the second half, are the Texans legitimately in the playoff hunt?
I think they still are. I think so much. Look, with this defense, I think they're always going to be in games. That's the thing that makes them somewhat dangerous, is that because they're so good defensively, they're going to stay in it. There are going to be games where they're going to lose close, and that's part of the deal. But I think because their defense is so good, this is a team that has a chance to win every single time they step on the field. Now, the offense is going to have to respond in kind, and they're going to have to start scoring some touchdowns, and they're going to have to get their running game going better, and not make so many mistakes, particularly the dumb penalties, pre-snap penalties, and things like that. But if they can start to score a few more points than they have before, they have a real good chance. This is not an AFC that teams are just running away with. There are a bunch of teams in the middle of the pack in the AFC, and the Texans are right there with them.
The Texans were not the only comeback kids on Sunday. The Houston Rockets outscored the Milwaukee Bucks 22-7 in the final 4.5 minutes of their game Sunday to win 122-115. In all, they scored 40 points in the fourth quarter. The Rockets have won 6 of 7. They're 6-3 to start the season. Safe to say this is a very different Rockets team from last year. Still very good, but less than stellar shooting squad.
Right. Well, let me say this first of all. I don't have any statistics to back this up. I wish I could find an easy way to find them, but Sundays for Houston sports is either all or nothing. It's either heartbreakers or just absolute amazing ball games. So I will say this about the Rockets: they are third in net rating in the NBA, meaning offensively and defensively they rank a total of third. They are first in three-point shooting. They are top of the league in both defense and especially in offensive rating. To jump from where they were, this was pointed out in The Athletic this morning, that they went from being a team that was 21st to, say, 24th or so in field goal percentage to this year being in the top 10. That has been the biggest weakness they have had. And one of the big reasons for that is Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant taking an elbow shot is basically a layup for him. They have become so much more efficient offensively, and they still are the best rebounding team in basketball. They're still going to get multiple second chance points. This is a team that is going to be very dangerous as they go along. If they can stay healthy, especially when they get Dorian Finney-Smith back, who I think is going to impact their lineup, when you pull all these threads together, their biggest weakness right now is turnovers, and that's because they don't have Fred VanVleet, who's handling the basketball and can keep things calm for them. But if they can manage their turnovers and continue to shoot well, they're going to be very tough to beat.
Is Durant basically the focal point of the offense? Other teams, when they come in, they say, we got to figure out a way to try and handle him, and then maybe we've got a shot. Does it take pressure off the rest of the team?
It's a good question. I don't think that's true. I think teams might do that, but I'm not sure if it's the smartest move because Alperen Şengün is scoring at tremendous rates, and Amen Thompson scoring. Jabari Smith Jr. is hitting shots. Even Reed Shepherd has had 2 really good games in a row. Offensively, they're a difficult team to match up with, and I think if they take away Kevin Durant, because he is so unselfish, Durant is not a guy who's out there just trying to score. It really does leave the ball game open to a lot of other players and a lot of other potential outcomes, and I think that's really hard on other teams.
When the Texans fell to 3-5 last week and the Rockets stumbled in their first couple of games a couple of weeks ago, what went through my mind was, oh no, we're going to have this whole season to talk about these teams week after week and why they're not as good as we thought they were.
Mm-hmm.
How much can a narrative change in a week or two?
A lot, particularly for the Rockets. Like, look, we're very early sample size. They're not going to lead the league in three-point shooting, right? But when you look at the two teams comparatively speaking, you could say with the Texans, you could see the actual weaknesses. I mean, the fact that they didn't have their starting running back and still don't, and we don't know if he's even coming back this season. The fact that they really didn't improve their offensive line very much. Those were things where you could see those weaknesses and understand where they could be problematic. With the Rockets, you look at them as a team, it's hard to pick out a whole lot of weaknesses in their lineup. And when they lost the first 2 games, one's against Oklahoma City, the best team in basketball. The second was against a really good defensive team in Detroit. This is a Rockets team that is going to mow down anyone who is not good defensively. They're going to ruin bad defensive teams, and most of the teams in the league are bad defensively. So I think, yes, it does turn around some fortunes. It does make you certainly feel better about the Texans. With the Rockets, I don't think anybody should worry just simply because we're so early in the season. But I do think with the Texans, it's a little bit of a brighter light on them now, at least today anyway.
Jeff Balke writes for the Houston Press. He co-hosts the Bleav in Astros podcast. Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig.
And that will do it for today's show. The Houston Matters team includes Michael Haggerty, Joshua Zinn, Brenda Valdivia, Mincho Jacob, and Laura Walker. Jared Carroll's our technical director. On tomorrow's show, we talk with Jeffrey Kluger, author of Gemini, Stepping Stone to the Moon, The Untold Story. Also, Michael Haggerty visits the first dedicated pediatric immunotherapy center at Texas Children's Hospital. I'm Craig Cohen. Join us tomorrow for those and other Houston Matters.